Cybersecurity concerns are ever evolving. OT cybersecurity is even more complex, and it's so much more than just software and hardware. How do you stay on top of it all? Aaron Crow has over 25 years experience with cybersecurity. 15 of those years focused on operational technology across multiple industries, and he wants to help you. Welcome to the Protect OT Cybersecurity Podcast, brought to you by Industrial Defender. Now here's your host, Aaron Crow.
Hey, good morning, Chris. I'm really excited to do this conversation. We've had a few conversations before, but I appreciate you coming on the podcast this morning and sharing with us. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and a little bit about the company.
Absolutely, Aaron. Great to speak to you as well, and excited to be here. My name's Chris Bihary. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Garland Technology, and I always like to say, start a lot of my conversations these days with the truth is in the packet. So we're going to have an awesome time today talking about that. And so what does that mean? Our tagline is "See every bit, byte packet." So Garland Technology's mission is, in my mind, very simple. Our goal is to figure out the best way to instrument networks to get packet level data to security and monitoring tools. And this is our core focus. So, we don't get involved in, making security software, performance monitoring software. We're really looking at building a proper foundation to get packet level data, with our hardware products as well as a virtual tap in a secure, easy, simple way. And so, obviously we do a lot in IT, OT, and today we'll be talking OT, but definitely excited to be here and, dive into this and how we help, infrastructures secure their networks.
Yeah, I started doing this way before OT was even a term. And I had to, work with IT technologies to bring into the OT space to be able to do this type of stuff. So working with taps, physical taps and copper taps and optical taps and port aggregators and all those kind of things, because we were trying to find ways that we could safely get data, because we wanted to know what was going on in these spaces, but we didn't want to just bring tools that are going to be, troublesome and scanning and causing issues in these OT spaces. And taps and aggregators and being able to look at the data without impacting the main process was a huge way for us to see without causing problems. Now, granted, it took a while to understand it and get it pushed through, and obviously there's some physical stuff that we've got to do with that, but man, it opened the floodgates to all of this data that we had no other way to see in a safe way.
Right. No, absolutely. And, to your point on IT, you're right. We've been doing this a really long time. I've been, personally in the tap aggregator packet broker business for almost 20 years now, and my business partner Jerry Dillard. So combined we're like 40 years, making taps and packet brokers. But you're right, in IT, they've been doing it a long time, right? They've kind of figured out that when you're putting together a high performance production network, which a lot of times, right, in IT they're very focused on, right, the very fast speeds and figuring out ways to improve their network. And some of the things they realized early on, and we were part of that, is by putting in a independent wiretap network tap that allows you to independently get a copy of the traffic from the network. So, when you're putting in new routers, new switches, new equipment, in these arenas, right, the whole idea is, right, you want, high performance, you want reliability, and, they would try to use, span and mirror ports. And, I always, joke about that, because they would say, hey, I'm putting all this new equipment, but then I'm going to turn on span, mirroring, RSpan. I'm going to then rerun the traffic over my high performance production network to find out where the problems are, right? It's kind of crazy, right, when you think about it that way. So yeah, absolutely. In the IT space, putting in taps, aggregators, packet brokers, has been something that has really become an accepted standard uh, in this space. And I feel like in the OT space, we're kind of going back to those early days of really talking about best practice because a lot of this is new, right? Moving to, serial to Ethernet in the OT space. A lot of people haven't worked with this type of technology. So, really excited that, finding ways to, educate folks and make sure they understand, all the pros and cons of how do you monitor your network? What's the best practice to do that? And you want to make sure that you're doing it in some cases a little more reliable way, sometimes in IT, because um, the OT space has a lot of challenges with connectivity and how to connect up.
Yeah, and that's even a bigger issue. One of the issues I see a lot, and I have for years now, is, you talked about all this new, and I've got really high end switching environments and stuff like that on the IT side. On the OT side, I don't have all that stuff. Like I've personally seen hubs and devices that, even if they can do span, they can only mirror out a subset of the ports. They can't do all of them. So you have to choose which of the ports you want to use. And then, they don't have a big management plane. So the performance of the switch is impacted, and, and then, power problems and all of these problems are compounded in these OT spaces. But yet I still want to get data. So I have to find another way. And taps and aggregators have, for me, were the solution, because I could put in a tap. It's not going to impact, right? If the power, if it's a powered or a copper tap, even if the power goes down, like the main function, the data is still going to pass through. I'm not going to get my copy of the data, but the main process, which is what I care most about. Like those are all the things that we care about in OT, is make sure the main process continues to work. And in a lot of these OT environments, again, they have old switches. They don't support span, or even if they do, putting it could impact your the primary use case of it. And obviously we don't want to cause problems in our OT network. So having other solutions, right, and other ways to do this is super important. And things like this make it very reliable and be able to see everything you want to see without impacting the OT environments.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing to talk about for a couple minutes here, is that we are dealing with a lot of times older technologies. So, you pointed out, right, the unmanaged switch. So that's the simple one is, you're going to go in and replace, every one of your switches to start getting some visibility. I know there's still supply chain issues out there, right?
Right.
So, if you're waiting, are you going to wait 9 months? And, are you going to use, are you going to say, well, you know what, I'm not going to move forward with, increasing my security posture because it just happens I have unmanaged switches. So, I think one thing that, people need to think about is, if you do have unmanaged switches, let's, look at where some of your critical assets are. And you can actually solve that problem today by using some wire taps. And, another thing is, the performance. A lot of these switches, as you said, in these environments are low performance, and there's a risk, right? So there's a risk to, by enabling those span and mirror ports, what's going to happen to that performance. And, in these environments, and we talk about this, I know we've talked together and been on some other panels and stuff, but there's that, right, where, IT, you're risking data, you're risking money. In these OT environments, be it in manufacturing or utility or maritime or whatever you're dealing with, there's a much higher risk here than just losing data. Not minimizing that piece of it, but we can obviously have injuries and death, and so when you're looking at some of the basic infrastructures, knowing what you have inventory wise, and if you have a corporate mission that says I want to start implementing some level of security, I think sometimes people use this as right as a holdback, saying our infrastructure is not ready. And so I think it's important to say, I've dealt with manufacturing companies where, they could have, 100, 200 sites, and they might not have standardized on, switches. So they have different switches, they have different routers, they have different equipment in their facilities. So, I like to challenge customers and our partners to say, what, let's not wait. We actually have a fix today. Maybe you're not going to go in and tap every link. That's not a realistic way to move forward. But you can start picking strategic areas within your network that we can gain packet level data for visibility, so we can get your security tools on the network. And I feel like sometimes that's an easy way of we're not ready. So I don't know, have you seen that in some of your use cases with customers? Because I don't know, for me, I don't accept that as an excuse to not at least start moving forward.
Yeah, and my experience, most of the time when they say they're not ready, it's because they don't understand, right? We fear the unknown, so they're not, in IT. And it's another differentiation between IT and OT. IT has they have an entire team of networking engineers. They're CCIEs, and they're very advanced people in networking. Usually when you're dealing with OT, you're dealing with plant engineers, and they're extremely intelligent folks. They're just not networking people. So when you start talking spans and taps and all of this, it's out of their realm of excellence, right? It's out of their expertise. So when they don't understand something, they hesitate to implement change, right? Especially because the vendor installed this stuff. They don't feel comfortable making changes. All of these concerns come up, and they're not wrong for those concerns. But what are good ways that you can do this now without ripping and replacing firewalls and switch? And that's the other piece to this, right? Even if I went out and I had unlimited budget and all this kind of stuff, and I were going to go replace all my unmanaged switches with managed switches. That's the people, process, and technology. That's the technology side of it. But then I don't have anybody to manage those switches, right? When you put in a tap, I'm not adding additional management and needs around that, because again, it's kind of standalone. If it breaks, if it stops working, it's not impacting my main process, which is important. I believe is not adding additional layers of complexity to my overall process that I don't have expertise to be able to troubleshoot if it happens.
Right. No, that's a great point. I'm gonna use that, Aaron, because you're right. It's when you're dealing with spanner mirror ports, that's the technical solution. But around it, you're right. There's a people piece. So let's talk about, well, who's going to configure the span mirror port? Who's going to own that? Who's going to validate the configuration? What if it's set up as bi-directional? Well, guess what? You just opened up a point of entry into your network. And, what if someone says, and I've seen this all the time, right? Hey, I'm going to go troubleshoot something on the network. I'm going to, change the configuration of the span mirror port. And I'm going to, borrow it for a minute, right? I mean, especially in IT, maybe not in OT, but I know in IT happens all the time. And maybe that configuration doesn't get put back. So you are now putting in, who's going to document and manage this entire process. That means every single span mirror port, you have to have this procedure put in place. Now, we do make, which is a great way to solve one of those problems. We have a hardware-based data diode. It's a plug and play. So literally you take a layer 2, UDP, or it can be a span mirror port where you literally plug in the span port in the data diode. We copy it out, and there's no way to go in a reverse direction. So that eliminates all human error, that anything that's connected to that span mirror port, there's no way to ever, go into the reverse direction in the network. So we do have some hardware isolation for that, but, having the ability to manage that process and the procedure, and who's validating that it's configured properly, and how much is that going to cost you? To your point, a wiretap, the beauty, and we haven't really talked about it. So for folks that don't know or never used a network tap or wiretap, I use those interchangeable because I feel like some people, right, they know the word wiretap just because they watch mob movies, and you wiretap the phone, and right, you're in the court of law, and they say, "Hey, hold on, let me play this. Was that you, Aaron?" Uh, well, it was, 'cause I can hear you talking.
Right.
So, so same concept is, uh, so a wiretap gets inserted in between two network devices, and again, it doesn't matter what those network devices are, routers, switches, PLCs. Um, so the idea is that you have a piece of cable connecting two network devices, and let's just call the devices A and B. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect that cable. We're going to take device A, plug it into the tap, and then take device B, plug it in the tap. And we have some taps that are no power. So you plug it in, it connects. And then what we do is we literally copy every packet. So I'm device A, Aaron, you're device B. So everything I say to you is going to be copied. And then everything you say to me will be copied. So, a couple things to think about is, the wiretap is, invisible on the network. So, number one is no one knows it's there. Number two, it's going to copy every single packet. So it's going to copy everything I say and you say. So both directions, right? Full duplex connection. We're also going to, even if there's errors, which, we both know we'll be making some mistakes on the podcast, and, but our tap will just copy it. It's not going to tell you, if it's good or bad conversation. And, but on the device A and B that we're tapping, the beauty is we actually never touch those two devices. So we're independent. So, when you look at, the basic concepts, Rob Joyce, there's a quote that I use of, he's with CyberSecurity for NSA, and he had a quote that states, hackers hate a wiretap. And, I'm improvising, obviously, but if anybody wants a quote, let me know. And, so they don't know you're there. Hackers don't see you there. They don't see you're copying the packets. So it's an independent way of monitoring your network. So back in the day, I used to say, check your oil. I don't know if anybody even checks their oil anymore. But right, I would, you look at your gauge, but guess what? When you pull it in the gas station, pull up the hood, and you want it to really see, do I have oil in my engine? And again, I have to admit, I don't remember last time I checked my oil. I don't know if anybody does that anymore. But the point is really simple: is, from a security standpoint, if I'm deploying security tools and I'm responsible for it, wouldn't it be nice that as the security engineer that you have an independent piece of hardware that no one else has access to, no one can change the configuration, and I know 100% I'm going to get every packet, right? I mean, this is, to me, I get really, fired up about this because, yes, absolutely, we're going to use spam, we're going to use mirror ports, it's going to be a combination. But if there is a compromise, and, we talk about this with a lot of people, if there's a compromise and you're using all your spam ports to collect the data, don't you think the hackers are maybe going to change what's going to the spam port, change the spam port configuration?
Yeah.
Right. So there's just a lot of things that, for me, if I know for my critical assets that I have some wiretaps in place, that I know I'm getting every packet. I can sleep at night. I know my security tools, my monitoring tools, they are getting every single packet, guaranteed, no argument. So I think it's always going to be a combination, but we have to start thinking about it. We have to start budgeting for it. We have to start putting it as part of your deployment, especially in your most critical. And maybe you start before and after your firewall, right? Start at the edge. Start at a couple critical assets. The Purdue model, right? So you want to get down right to your to your critical assets that you want to protect, and start thinking about how you design it. And I mean, Aaron, you've been protecting networks and deploying security solutions, and what are some of your thoughts on just some of those basics of if you're just deploying everything be a span, you're comfortable, but are you 100% comfortable running that network and being responsible and putting your signature on it?
Well, you hit some really great points there, right? Yes, span's a great tool, like mirror ports, all that stuff. But even when I've implemented this, right, I've always used a combination of both, right? So if you think about the higher level architecture of it, even if I'm going to configure spans on every single switch, right? If I'm looking at an overall a reliable architecture, right? And I want to look at things like, making sure that I'm not crossing network boundaries and I'm not allowing, vulnerabilities in, right? So I would put configure in my, my zone or in my OT environment, I would configure spans and everything. But before I consolidated all that stuff up, I would have it go through a tap, and it would be an optical tap. So I'm changing media. Fiber optic does not transmit power. So in a power plant, if I have a power surge or things like that, even if I'm across the room and I'm using copper wire, that surge can cross that copper wire and cause an issue. We've all seen lightning in our environments, and it fries your laptop or your modem or your TV or whatever, right? It's all of the electrical circuits. It's going to find the path of least resistance. So as soon as I isolate my environment with fiber optic cable instead of using copper, not to mention the security side of things, I'm not taking a connection and bridging from my really critical environment to get the data. Because those monitoring tools live in, my corporate space. They're going to live outside of my protected areas. I need to get that data out there so I can process it. I can do stuff with it. But I need to do that in a secure way. So one way to do that is have those things go through a diode, or, I was using just a simple optical tap with only the transmit at the lower level and only the receive on the upper level. So what does that mean? If somebody misconfigured the span port, like you talked about before, then that wouldn't be enough. They would then have to go roll the fiber on both ends in two different locations. So they'd have to make multiple physical changes to be able to impact and get into that environment. Like, it's not something a hacker can do remotely. Somebody would have to be physically in the facility, roll fiber, and make a switch configuration on that span port to be able to impact something. So that's multiple changes, and that's really hard to do, not to mention the whole performance thing of, what that looks like and how that impacts lower. Because a lot of these switches are old, even if they are managed switches. They're 2960s that are 20 years old, and they fall over, when... Even if I'm doing a span, we all know the switch configuration. If you don't, the management port of the switch is what does the span and the mirror, right? It has less processing and memory available than its normal data plane, right? So if I'm doing spans and I'm copying all the mirrors and the switch gets really busy, the first thing that goes is all the copied packets that are going out my span port. So I'm going to drop packets on that because I want to do its primary function, which is fine in a operational perspective, but in a, hey, there's a denial of service or some bad events going on, now I don't have a, because the first thing to go is the copy of the mirror and the span. Now I don't have the evidence to figure out what's going on in my environment. So I'm compounding my issues by not having a copy of what's going on, which was the entire purpose of me building this environment, right?
Right. Yeah, no, and I like one of the things you mentioned in there too is the, talking about the security sensors that you're deploying, because one of the things that we do approach-wise is, one is you want to look at, where on the network do you want to protect? Where do I want to copy the traffic? And I think one of the things that I've seen in OT, just to kind of move things quickly, is I found, a lot of customers, first move is, all right, I'm putting sensors everywhere.
Right.
So I'm going to put sensors in, wherever my assets are, wherever my span is, wherever my, devices, all my remote sites, all over the campus. And again, this creates, another level of management. So we talked about, okay, if you're going to use span mirror ports, you better have a really tight process. You better have an auditing system. Are you going to check that monthly, quarterly? Like, you have to, because like literally you're saying, I went and spent, a couple $1 million on my security infrastructure, but where I access the data from, so if you have that in place and you're auditing it and you're double checking every month, you're doing all this stuff, but then what about deployment of sensors? And, the easy way was, hey, let's just, put the sensors where, where I'm catching the data from. So now you start getting that, well, I got 10 sensors, 50 sensors, 100 sensors, right? This has created a whole new problem of, wait a minute, I've just now created a whole nother, I got the technology, I'm getting some data, but now I've just created a operational nightmare, because now you have all these appliances that you have to update, you have to manage, you have to support. Are you getting all the updates on them? And so we approach it, and we do this with a lot of our partners. Is we look at saying, let's figure out the best way to instrument your network, to get packet level data, to centralize monitoring sensors. So the idea is, if Nirvana, if you could just say, hey, every packet that traverses over my network somehow goes to a couple sensors that are load balanced so they could fall, but I'm getting every packet, right? That's really, that's the simple ultimate goal, is get me every packet, and I want to send it to my security tools. I probably want to have a couple so I can load balance them if one appliance goes offline, or I have to update it, or something goes wrong with the hardware. So think of the basic concept of, I want the packets, I want to inspect them. So we really try to look at how do we, centralize this and do it in a way that really simplifies the overall management costs of this. So we're doing a neat little, project right now with wellheads, and it's a ring. So it's challenging. So they could put sensors at all these wellheads, and they're, 50, 70 kilometers apart or whatever. And so what we're doing is we're putting in some simple aggregator data diodes, where at each site we're taking a couple spam ports, aggregating them, or tap ports, aggregating them together, and then we it's like a daisy chain right on the ring. So we're sending the traffic to one centralized monitoring sensor for their environment. So instead of them going out and putting, individual sensors at every wellhead that are, just difficult to get to, difficult to manage. So again, we talked about, purpose-built taps, data diodes, aggregators, right? There's no moving parts in these things, right? They're easy, they're simple. A lot of times people use the unmanaged version, so you just can't screw it up. You plug it in, it works. So, there's just one little simple example of, how we can consolidate. And so we're always looking at, if you have campus environments, and depending on how the network's laid out, you look at, putting sensors everywhere. It just economically becomes a nightmare. And you mentioned early on that, a lot of times these customers, they don't have enough IT staff.
Right.
So they're putting this huge burden on them. And so I think, one is, I need the packets. Two, I need to get my sensors. But, what's the middle ground to make sure that I'm putting in an overall infrastructure that I'm not going to create a whole nother management nightmare, for my team.
Well, and
I don't know, what are some of your thoughts
so
on that?
The other piece that comes up, and in use case I've used in the past, right, is there's always new technology that comes out. So new sensors, new ways to look at data, AI and ML, and whatever the thing is. So I always want to do side-by-side comparisons, proof of concepts, like as these new capabilities and stuff come out. But especially in my OT space, I can't just throw that thing out there in the wild and hope for the best, right? So what is a safe way to do that? Well, I need to be able to, we've all been to demos. Again, I work for a company and we have a product. And I've done demos and been on both sides of the table. It's easy to show a demo and show, because I'm only going to show you the best stuff, because it's in my environment, it's in a protected environment, right? It's easy to win because I control all the parameters, I control the data, I control everything. But put that thing into the real world, and I want to see it in my world, right? So doing proof of concepts is kind of the long way to do that. But imagine if you architected your environment and you were already getting all of that data, and then you already have a tool port, and then adding a new sensor, you just send a tool port to this other sensor. And then you can do a side-by-side comparison against 5 different products using the exact same data. and say, hey, which one is able to get me the data that I want, right? And see and take response. So it makes it adding capabilities and future-proofing your architecture that much easier, because I've already got the data, and then it's just a matter of sending tool ports wherever I want to go and have it process it. I'm not having to pay for the data multiple times. I'm not having to store the data multiple times. I'm just able to process it instantly. And be able to take action in response and be able to make decisions really quickly, and even say, hey, I want to run 2 of these systems in this environment for 6 months, right? And maybe I want both or whatever. It just gives you a lot of capability and flexibility that you don't have if you're having to install physical sensors everywhere that you go.
Right. No, that's great. We actually get involved in a lot of POCs, and you're absolutely right. Do you want to look at 4 different technologies, and you're going to take 1 2 months with one, 2 months with another, 1 2 months with another, and guess what? They're not getting all the same data, right? Because they're all being installed at a different time. So that is a great point of having that flexibility. That if you're evaluating technology, or as you said, right, that it's evolving so quickly, right? IT and security tools and what's available, and generally, a lot of times one product isn't the only way you're going to go, right? So you may find, hey, I'm going to go with 2 technologies, right? So by having it, you're right. Once we put this infrastructure together and we can centralize access to the packets, because again, what I say in the beginning, I said the truth is in the packets. So people laugh at me now at work. They're like, someone put up a sign on my door with some person standing like this, like, truth is in the packets. But it's so true. And so when we have these, when we put this in place, unless you change you expand your network or you increase your speed, OT, right? They're more methodical, right? We're going to be in the same speed for a while with a lot of these. So if you put this in, you focus on a combination of instrumenting your network to get that packet level data to a central location. You've now created this perfect out of band network of a copy of your packets where you just plug and play. You know what? I want to test a new technology. I want to see how it works. I want to test out a competitor. I want to see what's the latest, greatest. You can do that with your live data, not affecting your network, and it just gives you so much flexibility, because that's really what it's about. Is you got the packets and you want to inspect them somehow. So if you build that infrastructure, you now have the ability to be successful at testing out all these new technologies that I feel like, especially in OT, right? I'm seeing more and more companies come into this space, especially with a lot of these companies getting investments, and right, it's definitely it's a hot subject for everybody right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more that you think about that, like, a lot of the environments that I've actually built out labs, trying to represent what's in production in a lab, in a safe space that we can have, a place to implement new technologies, a place to test configurations and changes and architecture changes and all the things that you would normally do in a lab, right? But imagine, normally in a lab, I'm dealing with lab data. Again, I've got a lab with Industrial Defender, and we have OT devices and all that kind of stuff, but there's no real data in it, right? The devices are just sitting there. They're not actually controlling machines and all of that. But imagine, again, in this scenario, I'm taking live data from my production environment. I make a copy of it, and now I have that, and I can replay those logs or those packets in my lab space. So as I'm testing out the ability of a device or an HMI or my tools to be able to detect things or see things and understand what good, we're not even necessarily talking about malicious activity. Before I can start looking for bad, I have to know what good looks like. I would argue almost no one and very few people, and not to what degree, know what good looks like in their OT environment. If you're not looking at your packets and understand what does it normally talk to, what is its normal behavior, and it's there's a lot of tools that do that, but they're doing it in little snips. What if I had a long history of data that I could process and look at and be able to go back to? Is that normal? Has it done this before? Like all of that stuff, and be able to replay that in a lab. Like all of these are use cases where this becomes really powerful to play with in a safe way with real data, with your data, whether it's a proof of concept or architecting new capabilities or technologies or bringing in a new vendor, whatever those things are, having that data makes all those things much easier to evaluate and make decisions on going forward. And that's pre-bang, not counting post-bang. If an incident does happen, then I have those packets that I can put into my after action and be able to say, what happened? Why didn't I detect this? How do I fix my sensor so I can detect that activity? And then, think Yara rules and all these other capabilities of being able to look at the incident that happened and be able to say, okay, now I can go back and make sure that I implement all of these changes so that if this type of thing happens again, I would detect it next time.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's, it's the basics, right? What do you say in football, right? You got your blocking and your tackling, right? And I think, sometimes, when people are looking at doing these rollouts, we got to, think about the basics. Is really what we're talking about, which is amazing, is that we could talk about the basics, right? For 45 minutes, right? So it's, but it's just so critical because people forget, right? Because it's great when you go in and you go into a security operations center, or you go into some of our tech partners, and they got it's great, like look at what's happening on your network. But guess what? That amazing map of what's happening, can only be accurate if it's being fed the data. And so we have to continue to shout out to people of this is serious. This is a serious part of your configuration, and that's why, right, you get structural engineers coming in to build your house. You're not going in and just picking out your faucets and your nice cabinets and everything else, right? You want to make sure your house doesn't fall down. And this is what we're talking about here. Is we're talking about let's get the infrastructure right, and you also don't have to. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like let's figure out. You know what you want to. Your most critical points of your network are. Let's start there. Let's start budgeting to make sure that we keep adding on more visibility into the network. But make it part of your process that you're thinking every year of, like, how can I expand this, permanent, put it in once, it's set it and forget it technology, because once you put it in there, it's just doing its job. So take the time to really look at your network layout, look at how your data traverses. And I know there's challenging areas in OT where things would be super flat, right? It's like, so do I have to tap every link, or do I just start with certain assets? But you really have to look at your overall traffic flow throughout your network, and start somewhere. Even if you have to start with span first and that's all you can do, and your switch can handle it and you're not going to shut down your network, or start doing that right. Put a process together, how make sure it's fully documented, when you're going to audit your switches and your span port configurations, and then my recommendation is put on a very simple, cost-effective hardware data diode. Just add that that physical connection, that there's no way that you can ever come back into your live network. So now hey, I isolated it. Like you said, you've done it, right? Transmit, take a transmit, plug it in the receive, simplex fiber. If someone goes in there and breaks in, now that's, we're gonna have another podcast on that, right? Of physical security, so people don't break into your environments. But we have to start thinking about your foundation, and there's easy ways to get started without a lot of money, and don't use that as an excuse to, well, I can't do deployments yet because I got to figure this out. There's easy ways, and that's the stuff we love doing. Let's get in the weeds. Let's look at your network drawings. Let's figure out some areas that we can be impactful today, to start providing a secure environment. for our
Yeah,
customers.
absolutely. And that's a great point, right? Is you don't have to do it all. Like it's not all or nothing, right? You can start with a tap. You can start with some of these basic things. I want to get visibility on this system, on this environment, on this network, right? And you can start small. And as you build the use case and you get better at it, you can expand as you're upgrading that next one. You make sure that it's a managed switch that has span capabilities, and you get a data diode. And there's all these things that you can do, which also leads me to the next thing that I think is really big and not everyone thinks about, but looking at compliance and the architecture around, NERC SIP and federal networks and things like that. I need to be able to get data out of these environments without impacting them, right? So you talked about before, like a tap. A lot of these taps are non-configurable. Like I would, in my environments, again, I came for power utility, so NERC SIP was a regulatory requirement. I needed to get data out of multiple units, multiple environments, and they were NERC SIP. Well, if I put in a managed device, just a switch, for instance, and I was connecting that switch to another switch, even if it was a span, because I could reconfigure that switch port. It's just a switch port. Because I could reconfigure that and make it wrong from a compliance perspective, it's kind of a gray area where I'm kind of connecting two units there. If I put an optical tap in between that's not configurable, there's no IP address, it doesn't live on the network, you can't see it, it doesn't have a presence. It's just light. I can't hack light, right? I'd have to physically touch it. So by putting that in between those networks, I'm then able to get data out of these environments without having a compliance implication. I'm not breaking my compliance architecture. I'm not adding a risk, a vulnerability to the environment. It's not an asset that I have to track on the NERC SIP side and be an asset in my environment. Like all of these things, because again, that's another complaint or concern I've seen from customers. Well, this is a NERC SIP environment. If I add a device and it's another device I have to manage in my NERC environment, and how do I get the data out? So all these is another great use case of being able to get data out of these compliant and regulatory environments, whether it's Fed space or power utility critical infrastructure. And there's more and more regulations that are coming down the pipe in a lot of these different verticals, from rail to maritime and all of these 17 critical infrastructure verticals. They're all going to have more and more regulation. And this is a great way to be able to get data without impacting my security, without impacting my compliance requirements, and still having. So the answer shouldn't be, well, I can't. The answer should always be, how can I do this? Right? How can I?
No, that's a great point. We're involved in a lot of NERC SIP applications for that specific reason, as we have unmanaged. So copper, you don't have the luxury of using a single fiber, right? So we came out with literally very simple. You plug in a copper port, another one comes out. We removed all physical traces on the physical PCB. There's no way, there's no connections to the PHY or anything, so you cannot go in the reverse direction. And we use a lot of those in the utilities space in the U.S. And it's easy, simple, and you have to figure out, to your point, get the job done. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to accomplish that, and you have to eliminate that management connection, right, where it can be changed. It's a vulnerable area, so put something in there that's plug and play, unmanaged, happy days, right? I think we're super excited. We're looking at coming out with additional products that are either unmanaged or just a serial menu, simple, so you don't have to worry about being on the network, configuring it. And so that's a really good point. And we have to work with what we have. So if you're in utilities, you're using span mirror ports, you need a simple data diode or something to isolate, period.
Yeah, and the easy configuration or no configuration, again, we're going into environments. We're going into a power plant. We're going into a manufacturing facility. The people that own those environments they're not network admins. They're not, CCIEs. They're not super advanced. They just need something to work. And when troubleshooting comes around, it should just be, are the lights on? Are the lights on? Yes. If they're not, okay, I need to plug it in. Or, it should be that simple. I want to replace that thing with another thing. And I don't have to worry about, I'm just going to take that one out and put the new one in, and okay, it's good now. It's working again, right? I don't need to be able to have to log in and make all these configuration changes. Simple sometimes is better, right? But does it do the job and still not cause my, I don't need 12 people to be able to touch this thing to be able to make it work, where that's, like you mentioned with a span, you're going to have more understanding of networking and which ports and which protocols and all of that type of stuff. A tap is a tap. Like, I just put it in between and that's it. Like, it's super simple. It's dummy proof.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And, I'm glad we're doing this. We just got to keep educating folks on, let's go back to the KISS philosophy, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? Like, let's really, why are we adding another layer of complexity? And, and that's with span, that's with, deploying 100 sensors versus, 10 if you can, all these things of, let's not overcomplicate, let's keep the design simple. Let's just figure out, how can I get the packets to my tools? Easy, simple, cost effective. Keep telling people that should be easy, simple, cost effective. Don't overcomplicate it, because, it shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be. This should be easy. You shouldn't have to, buy a product and buy 10 different licenses for it and figure out what works, what isn't working. And it just doesn't make sense for these types of environments. Easy and simple is okay, especially when, you're dealing with infrastructure. So infrastructure, in my mind, keep it easy, keep it simple. And, let's just make sure that we're doing it in a secure, unidirectional way of getting the traffic from your network. And, put it on your agenda. If you're talking security, you should be talking about, best ways to instrument your network to get your packet level data. And, make sure you're not adding this whole complexity and additional management, additional support, that your team has to handle, because it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be really clear, when we say simple and easy, we don't mean not capable, right? It doesn't have to, just to be capable, it doesn't have to be complex. Like, complexity doesn't not necessarily mean better. Sometimes simple is just as good as complex, right? Especially in these OT environments. I need it to work, right? Availability and reliability is more important than, anything else, right? So knowing that, again, we're not suggesting that these reduce your ability to get the data. In fact, it enhances it, because I'm able to go into environments where I don't have the technical capability. I don't have lots of bodies. I don't have physical space. So this makes it simple so that I can get this data out, and it enhances my opportunity to put this in more places, because it is reliable. It doesn't impact my availability. It doesn't impact my reliability. I don't need 15 network technicians to be able to install it. Like, literally, I can send this to a mechanic and give him a drawing and say, plug this and this, here's another wire, plug this into that, and it's that simple. Okay, done. Are all the lights up? Yep. Okay, you're good. So it makes it that easy to deploy this at scale, and it's cost effective. Yes, it's a cost, but if you consider the differences of having sensors in every place, having people that are going to go out, like skilled technicians, network engineers that are going out in these environments, like, all those costs add up. So make sure that you're looking at all of those costs and all those considerations when you're doing your architecture, and considering all of those factors when you're making your decision. Yes, a tap is in a cost that maybe you didn't calculate, but when you compare that against the alternative, make sure that you're considering all the different factors when you're doing that evaluation.
Yeah, because we're here for the long term, right? So, especially, you look at utilities, right? A lot of times they want, 5-year warranties or longer, and in military applications. And so really look at your overall cost of ownership, over that 3, 5, 8-year period. Plus, we're doing stuff for nuclear plants, and they're like, yeah, we're going to install this in like 10 years, right? So, they're already planning. So it's one of those things that it really ends up being such a small piece of the budget, because, this isn't something that you're paying for license fees, right, every month and every year. And, it's you're putting it in, and it's it's a hardware-based cost that again is generally set it and forget it. But yeah, this has to be considered. You're actually going to lower your overall cost of your deployment of your security solution. You're going to lower your cost of operational. You're going to make it easier and simpler to get that information to your high tech solutions that are going to do the analysis and find out what's happening on your network. So yeah, I'm excited to continue to talk about this and continue to educate our customers and our partners and make them aware that make sure you're getting that packet level data and have it so it's easy, simple to get to add those future technologies to it, so you can evaluate new technology with your real data.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, what are in the next 5 to 10 years? What's something you're excited about coming up over the horizon? Maybe something that's concerning come up over the horizon in this space.
Yeah. So I'm excited. One is just the level of awareness now, right? I feel like in the OT space, there's no doubt, right? That's the buzz, right? I have traditional, IT, resellers and distributors and partners that were 100% focused on IT and, never did a single thing in OT. And you're seeing now, this marketplace, the awareness of, there's some major problems here that we have to, solve, and we need more, we already know the shortage of security engineers. We have an IT. I think, I don't have any stats on it, but you probably exit an OT of, we don't have, the experts in this space. So I think, the excitement is the awareness. The downside is of this is, we do have, right, shortages of experts in this space. And, I see more and more people, moving to, get educated. But we're going to see in IT and OT is that, right, that there's going to be this shortage of staff members. And I don't know if that's, how we even correct that. So, this, brings to me is, the importance of, awareness of the industry, people knowing that, hey, they have to get moving. Obviously, these regulations, right? They're, people are starting to put, time frames when people have to meet, the regulatory pieces, which is going to be challenging for a lot of people. And I think this is where, for me, my excitement in terms of our type of technology is that, we do a lot of things. We help companies make POCs happen faster. We help get the data to sensors faster. We help do deployments faster. Don't worry, you run into 100 base FX and LX, which you're going to run into. Don't worry about it. We can convert it to copper. We can, put stuff into, extreme temps, and, we can figure out ways to get that traffic. And so we're finding too that we're helping people install a lot faster than, waiting for all my, new switches to come in and then figuring out what my policies are going to be. And so, for me, I love the fact that, this is top of mind for everybody, and it needs to be. Some really good high-tech companies that were never in OT are coming into OT. So, and they're getting their folks trained up. They're educating them, and right, this is super positive, for our space. So, I'm excited that, the awareness is there. More and more people know they have to move forward. More people are, getting involved in this space, and I'm just looking forward to, being part of it and see how we can, help, help companies, get their network secure, resilient, reliable, and, work with, great companies like Industrial Defender and nothing meeting like it's a great industry and great people in this space, right? More and more people I meet, it's just a great space to be in. So right, we all have the same mission.
Right.
And we're all working together because we have to. This is important for all of us to be dedicated to this and we're obviously right. A lot of software companies are competing, but they're all working together, right, and collaborating on, when there are breaches, and so it's great to see, and excited to see where we are in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a fun place to be in. I've been here long enough to, it's exciting to see all the initiative and effort around it now. We're starting to get some momentum, and more and more companies are coming to the realization they've got to do something, right? So it's fun to be here. It's a great time to be here, right? And we are all working. So even my competitors, we are all working towards the same goal. Like the competitors on the public space,
absolutely.
Behind the scenes, we're working together, right? In a lot of, yes, we're still competitors, but we're competitors with the same goal. Like we have a bigger vision, right? Whether it's direct competitors to me or whatever. Like I want my power utilities to work. I want my rail to be safe. I want my airlines to be safe.
Absolutely.
Like all of us want these things. Supply chain, and we're all working to the larger, greater good. And it's not just a United States thing. It's an understanding of we want to do these things for the right reason. So having good people in this space, it's really exciting and fun to be in this type of environment.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And I know we got some travels coming up. I'm personally going to be going to ITSA in Germany, which is a security focus in Nuremberg, coming up in like 2 weeks, and then the following week I'll be in Dubai for GITEX, which is focus on all types of security, but in the Middle East we're doing a lot of work for critical infrastructure there. There's a lot going on there that they're making sure that their environments are safe, and we also going to be in London as well in November. Actually going to be on a panel talking OT solutions as well, and so a lot going on, a lot of education. So and I know Aaron, you're on the road a lot as well, and so hopefully you'll be at a couple of these events, and we can get together. It's always fun. So really appreciate the invite, and hopefully we can do another podcast in the future.
Absolutely.
As well.
Man, there's just so many more things we can talk to and dig into. So I appreciate the effort, the opportunity today to chat with you. I know you got a lot going on, and as you said, like we're constantly going around, but there's a lot of opportunities for people to learn and understand and dig in. Like we need more and more people, and the more that people are diving in and digging in and finding out, what they can do, how they can help, and there's information out there. That's why I host this podcast. It's why I bring people like you on to be able to provide value to people that depend, no matter where you are in your journey, whether it be personal or in your organization. Like there's a lot of resources out there to improve, and it doesn't mean you have to have huge budgets to be able to take a step. You can start with just a single tap, right? It can be that simple. Start with 1, and then expand to 2, and then expand to 10, and start understanding what's going on in these spaces. It doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. Excellent. Well, definitely, again, thank you for having me, and look forward to hopefully meeting up soon, Aaron.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the time, sir.
Thanks for listening to the Protect OT Cybersecurity Podcast. If you got some valuable information from today's show, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Aaron and to get your free copy of the OT Cybersecurity Solution Buyer's Guide, go to industrialdefender.com. That's industrialdefender.com, or you can click the link in the show notes.